Damian on Design each Saturday on the Lucy Ann Land Show. Damian Farrell from Damian Farrell Design Group back with us. Good morning.
Good morning.
When you think about putting together a home, one of the essential areas, I think, when it comes to design is the tile work that goes into it. We're going to talk tile today.
We are. It's one of my passions. It's one of the things I just love putting together in any project.
Our guest is Kathleen Summervell. She is architectural design rep with Virginia Tile, a company that goes back to 1928. Tell us about its origins.
The name Virginia Tile actually comes from the home of the Stevenson family. They were originally from Virginia, moved up to Michigan 3 generations ago to take part in the auto industry and all of the wonderful opportunities that were happening at the time. They've been involved in the tile industry from the like toilets and that sort of part of the ceramic part, and then moved into just strictly tile after that.
And now they've grown to what, 8 locations?
We have 8 locations in Michigan, Ohio, and 1 outside of Chicago.
The company's very old. Tile work goes back
7,000 to 8,000 years.
Centuries. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing, isn't it?
What is the history behind tile?
All right, so I'm going to cover 7,000 years in 5 minutes. How's that?
Only Damian can do that.
Exactly.
Maybe I'll steal 2 extra minutes. It first started to appear in medieval times, just as in its most basic form. So essentially, I mean, as we all know, all tile is essentially earthenware, and the differences have to do with the compression and then also the glazes and so on. But what we saw back in medieval times was just the compression of earthenware. Some of it was unglazed. Then they started to experiment with some very simple glazes and realized that by dipping in some and then not dipping in the glaze in others, they suddenly had something that was contrasting, and so we saw the beginnings right there of some artistic influence. Then about the same time, if not even earlier, as the Muslim empire was growing, they were so focused on their culture as well as conquering and spreading. So, their focus on art, on theater, on fabric, on color, it led very naturally to tile work. And so, I mean, some of the mosques that are still standing, the Shah Mosque, for instance, is just an iridescent blue experience when you walk into it.
Because of the tile.
Because of these tiny tiles with their magnificent glazes, and these glazes have never faded. So as they spread out and conquered the world and brought all their art with them and their culture and so on, a natural spread was across to Spain. Spain's the first one in the way, right, as you cross the Mediterranean. And so Spanish kind of picked up on that, and it mainly happened in Mallorca, which of course is where Majolica comes from, and Majolica still exists today, and it's a popular item and a great collector's thing, moving through France, and then up into Belgium, and then into Holland, as we know it, or the Netherlands today, mostly in the south. Then as it spread into northern Netherlands, the tile industry really focused around the town of Delft, and of course everyone knows about Delft pottery.
Right.
But at the same time, then the Dutch had started to do all their trading with the Far East, all right, with the Dutch Trading Company, United Dutch Trading Company. What they were bringing back from China was the beautiful blue pottery with the white decoration on it, which became hugely popular. The folks in Delft were trying to imitate or at least get to the same kinds of quality of the earthenware. Struggled for a while, but finally sort of found their own footing and their own style, and so Delft became very popular. Still is to some extent as a collector's item.
Right.
It was enormously popular during that era. So you've got some of that going on. Then you've got the English sort of advancing across the channel with some of their tile manufacturers. Did a little dash over to France, had a little fracas with Napoleon and so on, stole some of their, didn't steal, borrowed some of the French technologies, brought that over, and then that set the tone for, a much, the arts and crafts movement ultimately. We're talking obviously centuries here. But so these different countries started to develop their own thing. Meanwhile, the conquistadores, of course, are jumping on their ships, and they're off to go find, the new land. And on those ships, of course, there's tile.
That's how
so
it
they
happened.
hit, they bump into America. And so then we start to see early Spanish tiles and duplication of that work around fireplaces, thresholds, entries. Expensive stuff, so really in the more affluent areas. So, over a 7,000 to 8,000 year period, this is how tiles sort of spread. Then we hit in the 1800s the arts and crafts movement, which I think really elevated tile to an art form. So it was a wonderful combination of how do you take the art, combine it with the mechanization that was going on. So you could mass produce wallpaper, you could mass produce the tile itself, but you still had to do it by hand, the decoration part of it by hand. So you had the English arts and crafts movement parallel with the American arts and crafts movement doing similar things. And that period, even now, is very influential. I mean, if we talk about, one of our local favorite places for everyone, Matawi Tile, no, that's what she has focused on in some ways, is some of the bringing back of some of that arts and crafts.
Right.
When some of her leaf patterns, and now she's doing Frank Lloyd Wright stuff. So it's just this. I just find it fascinating that over this massive period of time, yes, the technology has advanced, and now we can mass produce the size, and we can inkjet, and Kathleen can talk about the finishes better than I can. But it's one of those materials. It's perfectly healthy. I mean, you know how concerned I am about healthy environments. Well, then there's no off-gassing. Nothing in its installation is toxic. All right, it's so hard-wearing. You go from the very functional, in a kitchen, if you will, a commercial kitchen of quarry tile, to the most exquisite tiles and unfortunately, this is a visual show in a way, right? So, for those of our listeners who are interested, this will be up on YouTube. On our YouTube as usual, and we're filming some of these beautiful things we have in front of us.
Look for Damian on Design on YouTube. So, in essence, that history now today plays very greatly into what we're doing with